This is the full zero-wait state interview of Cantel Medical. In this video, you'll gain insight on the advantages and disadvantages of various PLM systems, as well as its practical applications within the medical device space.
Hi, this is Steve Porter from Zero Wait State. I'm here today with Tim Brown from Cantel, and we're going to be talking about some various topics in the PLM space. I'm going to let Tim kind of qualify himself versus giving him a formal introduction, because I think he can probably talk about his qualifications better than I can. And so we're just going to go through a series of questions that we think companies that are using PLM, people in positions of support in those companies would be interested in kind of knowing the answers to. So Tim, I wanted to start out with the first question, which is, what is your experience level with PLM? You know, could you give us your background and the systems you have worked with previously, and what specifically you've leveraged in PLM in your previous roles, or what you've leveraged it for in your previous roles?
Sure. Thanks, Steve, for having me today. So I've been working with PLM and quality management systems for about the last 20 years or so. And so the current system that I'm currently working with is Propel PLM. Have worked a lot with the Agile PLM space, Windchill, ETQ, Master Control, different labeling systems and different systems that interact with PLM systems as well. ERP systems all have some sort of integration or some sort of activity that ties in with that PLM system, whether or not it's item or numbering control or it's revision, bill of material processes. There's always some sort of connection between that. I think there's in previous roles also in the QMS system, you're really looking around what is driving around that finished good, what's happening around that product definition, and you start to see some of the other applications and processes that drive into that, like CAPAs and audits, manufacturing nonconformances, complaints, even investigations that might happen as a result of design and development types of things. And we've really, in past roles, we've really been able to utilize the PLM system and expand it to incorporate information that's coming from all of these different areas, give it a consistent process, show the end users where their information, where their data is going, and really be able to improve an organization's either throughput in a process or throughput in their development activities.
It's fair to say you have kind of a theme in your career as far as the types of companies that you've worked with as well. What is it about sort of the medical device space? And I'm sorry, I'm going off script here a little bit.
No, that's fine.
What is it about the medical device space that kind of attracted you? And how do you feel about technology, this technology and sort of really helping specifically companies in that medical device space?
Yeah, out of the military, I got involved with a medical device startup, and worked in the document control space, and that really started to see some of the need for to be able to show an auditor, but also the need to be able to explain what you're doing to from a process, from a product. How is this product built? What are the processes that go into that? Whether or not it's med device or any, even pharmaceutical has the same type of requirements, where the process of manufacturing an item is just as important as the product that you're producing. Or the product definition activity, just as important as the drawing and as the bill of material. The information on how you're developed or how you're manufacturing and the controls that you put in place is just as important. And med device has really jumped on that activity, or on that bandwagon, if you will, to say we need to be able to document that, and in order to prove that our product is valid, and then be able to prove on top of that that it's safe and effective, and for our customers, our end users that are using this medical device, or hospitals that are using the med device, it really goes to show the amount of effort that gets put into that, and the control of that information just makes it a lot easier to work with and develop those products.
Thanks. So having worked with multiple PLM systems and having recently implemented Propel PLM for your current company, can you kind of contrast the experience implementing sort of the traditional on-premise PLM versus a modern cloud-based system like Propel?
Sure. One of the biggest things that we saw in this recent implementation was really the speed in which we can start to see that end product. So if you're looking at an agile type of an approach, or an agile type of an approach to implementing a system or updating a system.
The method, not the product.
Yeah, the method, right? You're looking at an agile method. You're seeing your minimal viable product right away. You're seeing, okay, I'm logging in, I'm seeing this information, and how do you want to tweak this? What are your processes associated to that? And so the speed in which we're able to give the team members, the people engaged in this product or in this process, the ability to see that activity, and so just getting hands-on, getting people engaged in that made it go a whole lot faster, and we could tell the people that were engaged in the system were also really engaged in the process, and it made those conversations a lot easier.
So, just to kind of summarize that, is it fair to say that the technology itself was more, I guess, accessible up front so that you could get more people involved more quickly than with a traditional on-premise solution? That
Yeah,
it was
definitely.
more finished,
Mm-hmm.
from the beginning, and then it's a matter of configuration. Is that kind of how you experienced it?
Yeah, definitely. We weren't waiting for servers to be stood up. We weren't waiting for environments to be requisitioned or things like that. When we started off, and in 2 weeks we had our initial product, and was able to as soon as we signed our licensing, we were able to continue moving forward, and with very little delay.
Okay. So now that how long have you been on Propel now?
We've been on Propel for about 3 years.
Okay. So over this time, have you or your users identified specific advantages of using a cloud-based system like Propel versus a legacy on-premise system, just from functionality perspective? What are some of the things that you can do in Propel that you weren't able to do like in an on-premise system?
Sure. I think one of the biggest pieces, specifically with Propel, because it's connected to the Salesforce platform, is that we're able to deal with user authentication a lot better than we have been able to in previous, or even in other systems. At the time that we went live with Propel, we didn't have some of those user authentication systems in our own environment. We've since grown up a little bit on that, but that was a big advantage that we're able to do there. System installation, when we go through versions or we go through changes, we still have our development environments, we have our QA environments, and a production environment. Those are a lot simpler and easier to manage those changes throughout the Propel lifecycle. We even have we manage our Propel PLM lifecycle of that product within our instance. And so definitely, having it a cloud, cloud system, it makes that that process a lot easier. And then just the user experience with a web-based application, you're able to uh, not have to go out and touch all of the computers that are using this application. In fact, I don't even have to touch the Salesforce servers whenever we do an update. It's done as part of our process.
So upgrades, I guess, in general, is kind of what you're really talking about on some level. You know, historically, I've noticed especially with medical device companies, that a lot of them stay version locked because of the level of testing that's associated with, going to a new version, because they have to, basically go back in and revalidate all of the things that have changed, in the system when they do their upgrades. So you'll have, medical device companies that are running on, 5 or 6-year-old technology because they don't want to have to deal with that.
Right, and we deal with a risk-based approach for that validation, and we still go through testing and go through all of our due diligence with any of the upgrades. But it really keeps it on the forefront and understanding of what we're doing with the software to keep it current, and it almost makes us want to stay current with that as well, because it is so easy, right? It's like, why wouldn't you go to the latest version? It's just that simple. It's not like I'm changing out my computer. I still have a 10-year-old computer sitting right next to me because I don't want to change out that computer. It has too much stuff on it, right? It's not the same. I'm using it completely on the web, and just makes it a lot easier to maintain.
Got it. So given your previous experience with Agile PLM, were there any benefits or challenges moving to Propel? Any things that you had to kind of unlearn? And then are there any obvious advantages or disadvantages between the two systems? And the reason I ask is that, obviously with Agile coming to, sort of an end of life in the foreseeable future, I think a lot of companies that are currently running Agile are going to have to make a choice. And I'm just curious, what attracted you to Propel in regards, because I think that's the system that you've probably used the most and were the most familiar with, was Agile. So kind of what's your perspective in contrasting the two technologies?
Yeah, I spent probably the last 10, 12 years or so working with Agile PLM, and so it definitely was a changing from that paradigm into something different was a scary thought process, right? It was going, oh my goodness, I know I know the Agile PLM is gonna, end of life. What else is out there? What else is available? And the transition from Agile PLM to Propel PLM is a no-brainer. This is the data structures are similar, the processes are very similar, and I would say even more flexible in Propel PLM. We're able to do a whole lot more in Propel than we would have been able to do in Agile without some serious customization. And even the when you're looking at an item and you're looking at your relationships to that item, it's in a very similar thought process, right? So the constructs of a subclass and a class, or class, subclass, and fields, right, and how they associate and relate to each other, are very similar in nature, right? They have different terminology, but they're very similar in and made it easy to transition to Propel PLM.
And I think that was by design. I think a lot of the guys at Propel, have backgrounds from Agile. One of the things I've always kind of characterized, I'd be curious if you think it's true, is that if you look at Agile sort of being sort of at some point, probably in the last couple of years, it reached its sort of climax or pinnacle, and there really hasn't been a lot of development done. And so that, flag has really kind of been dropped on the battlefield, if you will, sort of carrying forward the standard of Agile. And it always seemed to me, looking at Propel, is like if Agile had continued on as an independent company and
Yeah.
developers were still working on that technology, it seems to me like Propel would be sort of the logical extension, moving forward of what Agile was, to kind of bring
Mhm.
it into the future. Is that, do you think that's a reasonable characterization?
Yeah, I think that is, and to give you an example of how that plays out and how that's true is that we were able to spend and pay more attention to spend time and more attention to the data reporting aspects of it, our dashboards, notifications that come out of Propel, and just giving people not more access to data, but more relevant, timely information on what's happening in PLM.
Is there any, and you've talked about this already, but, what are some of the specific advantages that you've experienced with Propel running on the Salesforce platform?
I think one of so we looked at this when we started out and saying, okay, where do we want to take advantages of some of those common things, and they still hold true to even what we're doing today. It's a common for one, it's a common platform to other processes that we already have in Salesforce. We're currently using some of the CRM capability, and a couple of other customer management pieces. But it's with our SAP integration and SAP activities with Salesforce, we're able to use some of the common APIs. We're able to use common platform activities. The integrations, if you will, to other applications. It's a common activity. People have already developed something for a Salesforce integration, if you will, right? And so we're able to use some of those common platform things to be able to get to some of this data, to be able to use some of this data. And so that's definitely a common, how are we going to use this data throughout our organization, right? The same user experience, user interface, and then we're able to, running on that Salesforce platform, we're really able to expand our functionality to what makes Cantel Medical a great company is, you know, developing those custom processes, if you will, and putting them on the platform, right? So we're using Propel data. We have an additional process that says, hey, we want to make this even better and expand our use cases in this, and that the Salesforce platform allows us to do that.
Thanks for that. So again, we talked a little bit earlier about medical device. Obviously, Propel's put a lot of energy into positioning Propel as a solution for the medical device space. They brought in, Chuck Sarin from Stryker, and they have a lot of mind share that they devote internally to, making Propel a useful tool for medical device. What has been your experience? Is there anything unique inside of Propel in regards to medical device capabilities that you benefit from?
I think it comes for a medical device. There's a couple of pieces that are key. It really comes down to how we manage and control our products, right? Being able to see the DMR or the device master record, being able to create a design history file within the structure of PLM natively, and be able to categorize some of this data in a way that we just haven't been able, in other applications haven't been able to see. Managing that in the native, I'll say native format of Propel, but we're not pulling it out into a completely separate application. We're not managing a technical file in a different database. We're able to pull and aggregate the same information that everyone else is using into a common platform, common activity.
You're able to derive the information that you need instead of having to explicitly create it.
Yes. Yeah, we're not copying that into a completely different system, and that's where I think the benefits definitely within Propel have been able to do that.
Okay, I think we're to our last question. With the benefit of hindsight, are there any lessons you would apply if you were to go through and re-implement Propel again? Things that you would like to do differently if you were going to start over?
Sure. I think there's two key things that I try to emphasize in every implementation that we're doing. And one is your process, simplify your work process, and the other is user permission management. When you're looking at your workflow process, make sure that your status is a true status. It's not a status inside a workflow can mean a collection of different tasks or steps that need to be done during that status or during that workflow stage or things like that. You don't have to have statuses that are, well, this person is going to go do this thing, then this person is going to go do this thing, and this person is going to go do that. That's not how I would say modern PLM systems are really driven around. You are going through a status, it's out for approval, or it's in an implementation phase or something to that effect. And you have several steps and several things that need to happen within that phase and within that status. So keep your workflow process simple. The detail that happens inside there can be as complex as you need to. The other is user permission management. Again, keep it simple, and it's based off of your process. So if you have multiple processes, you're going to have multiple permission collections or sets or whatever you want to call them. But keep the organization of your process and permissions that are happening in there simple as well. You have three basic ones. You read, create, and then manage. Right? In every single process, you've got those three elements that you can bucket any activity into, and the levels of permission obviously change within those spaces. But the more complex that you make a creation process on who can create what and what happens when and where, that the more complex it is to maintain, validate, and test, and all the variations that come with that. So keep it simple.
So KISS.
Definitely. Yes.
Yeah, it's hard once once you put something into a PLM, it's hard to get it out, as far as a process or a permission or whatever. So
yeah, and it's a mindset change for some people too, right? Because if they don't have their own step in the process, they don't feel like they're valued, or they don't feel like they're right. And it's a whole cultural aspect that comes into this. And so if you just say, look, you have this collaboration space, that this is where you spend the time and the energy in doing that, then let's call out, these are the things that have to happen during that space, right? These are the things, and that can fluctuate depending on what your process is, what your product is. It can fluctuate in a lot of different ways. But when you're looking at it from a management perspective, to say, what's my throughput time of this space? How can I improve this space? it makes it a lot easier to say, look, our times went down from, in one company, it was 77 days, and we took that process down to 10 days, right? That's a significant change in the process because we started measuring and started working through all of those activities. And so keeping it simple, you can have consistent measurements because you know what's happening or know what those process steps are, and the variation comes in the detail that happens there.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to answer my questions, and look forward to talking to you in the future.
My pleasure. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for watching. If you found this video informational, be sure to hit like and subscribe. For more information, you can go to zerowait-state.com.